And what's going on, Trojan family? The Madman here on the one and only USC LAFB show. Wanted to jump on midweek and offer my thoughts on the state of the team post Nebraska and as we embark on the game against Northwestern Friday Night Lights in the Coliseum. I didn't get an opportunity to jump on with the band, Tim and Ryan, at the end of the weekend, as well as early in the week, given some business travels. So figured I'd carve out some time with all of you to talk about my thoughts on the state of the team moving forward. Obviously, a couple days old now, but the Trojans battle it out, gut it out, tough physical ball game against the Cornhuskers and win 21-17. And a lot to unpack there because you can approach this from a glass half full perspective or a glass half empty perspective or the fact that there's just half the amount of water in a glass perspective. And on one hand, road win, always tough to come by here in the Lincoln Riley era in the Big Ten. So whenever you can get it, that third Big Ten win in a very difficult place to play like Lincoln, Nebraska, you have to be very proud of coming out of that game unscathed and with the W. On the other hand, you're playing a Nebraska team that isn't necessarily a great team, is a very average team in my estimation, a team that really struggled from an offensive line perspective coming into this game against USC. And then, of course, the Raiola injury and those implications in the final quarter and a half of the game. So as we sort of look at what really transpired Saturday evening in Lincoln, Nebraska, it really was a tale of two games. And it was that first 2.5 quarters where Nebraska was up 14-6 with their starting quarterback, Dylan Raiola. And then there was a second game, the final quarter and a half, where SC was able to outscore Nebraska 15-3, really separate and do a phenomenal job, albeit with Nebraska leaning on a true freshman quarterback, TJ Lateef, who was really sprung into his first meaningful action of his career. And I think as we look at what the game plan was, it wasn't anything different than what we expected. And a lot of what Tim and I discussed last week in the pregame, Nebraska came in very much with an Illinois and a Notre Dame mindset, which was pre-snap read at the line, assess the situation in terms of numbers in the box. If you've got a heavy box, you're going to check to a very safe throw, either an inside slant or a slot outside corner 8-9 yard pass and really keep the defense off balance. If you felt like it was a light box, you were going to go give it to your workhorse. In this particular case, it was Emmett Johnson. And that game plan worked very well for Nebraska moving forward offensively. And that was evidenced by A, their ball control, and B, their ability to execute in the red zone and have two sustaining drives on the road of being up 14-6. While Raiola didn't set the house on fire statistically by any stretch of the imagination, to that point, he was 10 for 15 for 91 yards and a touchdown, which was very complimentary to what Nebraska had going in the running game. On the flip side, defensively, I thought Sierra Wright did a phenomenal job on all the otherworldly Makai Lemon, someone who we expect to really battle it out with Jeremiah Smith and with Elijah Surratt for that coveted Biletnikoff Award. And Lemon, the absolute unquestioned superstar of this Trojan team offensively. What a phenomenal year he was having and is continuing to have, but was very limited in this game, 2 catches for 18 yards. And I thought that affected Jaden Mayava. And that was something we've also discussed over the last few weeks, that if you really break it down, 80% of Mayava's throws this season have been one read throws. And that has led him to a place of decisiveness. That has led him to a place of timeliness. And that has also led him to a place of calm and comfort. All three things that we have noticed have been a significant step function increase in terms of his performance from 2024 to 2025. Now, when you break that down even further, part of his comfort of being able to go one read has been having the ultimate security blanket in Makai Lemon. And anytime Lemon is either off to a slow start or is shadowed in a very significant way, you can see it disrupt Maeva because he doesn't have his alpha. He doesn't have the guy that he has the utmost chemistry with in Mekhi Lemon. You saw that in patches against Notre Dame where Lemon was covered very significantly given what Notre Dame was trying to do on the back end, really looking to double him, but with some strong side zone concepts there. And then what you saw with Sierra Wright against Nebraska. And for as great as a player as Jacoby Lane is, and he is every bit the talent in so many ways of Mekhi Lemon, Maeva just doesn't have that same level of ultimate chemistry with Jacoby Lane. And so when Lemon is either not completely clicking on his A game or he's overly shadowed, it unnerves Maeva in a very significant way because he really looks at Lane more as kind of a deep threat or someone that he can go to in the red zone, but not necessarily his every down wide receiver number one. And that's what you really saw materialize in the first half of this game as Maeva ultimately only ended up going 9 for 23 for 135 yards and an interception. Now, I think what happened in this game is the Raiola injury midway through that third quarter. I mean, let's break that down. Maeva's coming off of a poor throw. That was a poor throw and a poor read, interception. Nebraska now with the ball on USC's plus side of the field, up 14-6. And the way that game was going, it would have been very interesting to see what USC would have done had they fallen behind by 2 scores. Even if that was a field goal situation and it became 17-6 with a little more than a quarter to play, considering Lemon's challenges of getting open, considering Maeva's lack of rhythm in terms of throwing the ball. Obviously, King Miller was absolutely phenomenal in this game. 18 carries, 7.4 yards per carry, and a touchdown. King Miller just is such an explosive back. I think there's an element to his game that he's just sort of scratching his surface because right now he's getting the ball, he's seeing that first hole, and he's just exploding. I think as he develops that lateral vision and his ability to sort of bounce things to the outside or stretch out and then find a hole between a couple of options, King Miller's game is going to go to an even greater level, which is just scary for everybody in the Big Ten and everybody in the country. And King Miller, and a lot of credit goes to this USC offensive line in terms of how they run blocked in this game to be able to allow the pace of this game to stay in the game, given that it was methodical, it was slow, it was a game in the trenches. And so that patchwork offensive line that has been through so much this season with so many injuries did a really phenomenal job run blocking. And you have to give credit to that unit and particularly the quality of depth with that unit, which has been a question going into this season. So absolutely phenomenal job. But back to that situation. So Nebraska opportunity to go up 17-6. Raiola, of course, gets hurt there on the sack, fumbles the ball, and you had a little bit of back and forth. SC drives down about 20 yards, gets stopped on downs. TJ Lateef comes into the game. You can already see how limiting things were for Nebraska's passing game. They come down, they come up empty, and then on the missed field goal, and then that really sort of empowers and opens up SC and does some really phenomenal things on those 2 touchdown drives. The 29-yard, beautiful deep ball that Maeva had to Tanoh Kynes. And then in the fourth quarter, the flea flicker, that deep ball, the 43-yarder to Jaden Richardson. And ultimately, it was enough for SC to move forward. However, you could tell how much the injury played a role in this game because Nebraska went from executing an Illinois and a Notre Dame offensive game plan to really looking more like a worse version of Michigan because TJ Lateef came in. You could see how uneasy he was. Ultimately, 5 for 7 for only 7 yards. He fumbled a snap in the fourth quarter when Nebraska had an opportunity to drive and put a touchdown together, had to settle for 3. And you just saw the corners and the secondary sitting on those 6, 7, 8-yard routes, those curls, those stops, those corner routes. There just was no respect for Nebraska on the deep ball. And that, I think, was the big difference in this game where they became very, very one-dimensional. And then you could continue to sort of stack the box without that respect for the passing game, a la a raw Underwood against Michigan. You could shoot the gaps with your backers, and things became very, very tough sledding. So kudos to SC for pulling it out. However, given the fact that this was a game coming off of a bye week, coming off of a loss and a bye week, I think you left feeling like you wanted more and you needed more. And so while this was a great win for SC, you're 6-2. And now, as you look at this schedule, it's interesting. You're now in chapter 3 of this season. The first 4 games really glorified preseason. You had 2 non-power 4 teams, and then you played Purdue and Michigan State, who, by the way, both of whom have yet to win a Big Ten game this season. So you had a very light first 4 games. Then you had this gauntlet of the 4. The at Illinois, back home for Michigan, at Notre Dame, at Nebraska. You go a very respectable 2-2. You split that 4, and now you're set up for the last 4, where you got Northwestern at home, a feisty Iowa team at home. Then you go the big one to Eugene, Oregon, and then back home to finish it up against UCLA in the Victory Bell game. So you're looking at a situation here where you go 4-0, 10-2, 8-1 in the Big Ten with a win over Oregon. That would position USC no worse than 3rd in the Big Ten Conference, and no question about it. If SC is able to win out, they will most certainly make the college football playoff. However, if SC cannot get that Oregon game, that's going to be the one. That's where the game that's really going to decide this season. That'll drop SC down to 9-3, 7-2 in the Big Ten. And when you look at the state of the Big Ten after your top 3 teams, and I'm going to define the top 3 teams, of course, as Ohio State, of course, as Indiana, and right now Oregon, but that can swap in terms of the winner of the Oregon SC game. After you go through those 3 teams, there is a pretty significant drop-off from 4 onwards in terms of Big Ten quality. So that, combined with the fact SC sitting on 19th in that initial college football playoff poll, the resume is not going to be enough. If SC cannot beat Oregon, the resume of just having beaten a ranked Michigan team, and I think with this injury now, I expect Nebraska to drop a few more games. This is probably going to end up being an unranked 7-5 Nebraska team when it's all said and done. If the only win on the schedule in a meaningful way is that Michigan game, that's not going to be enough of a resume to get SC into the college football playoff. So, they're sitting at 19. They're right probably where they should be. I think it's a fair ranking. And it's so funny how, so much conversation about the AP poll, and rightfully so. I think the AP poll has an opportunity to really transform moving forward. I think you need folks that are really more focused of their jobs, of really assigning ranking and really dedicating the time to be more experts in terms of that situation. But oftentimes it's all table stakes. I think those things get overblown. This was the first real ranking to come out, and SC at 19th ahead of Michigan, which was such a conversation, is about right. And I think the committee did a pretty decent job of getting it right. And now you're going to see those rankings hone and refine moving forward. So these things self-correct. I think sometimes we overreact to initial polls, understanding it's week 2, it's week 3. You need enough of a sample to then really put a resume together, to really put a story together in a significant way, particularly when you're comparing Team A versus Team B. So, fans, I wanted to just get on, offer my thoughts. I walk away encouraged that SC was able to win this game, get to 6-2. Always very exciting when it's a victory Sunday and a victory week. But I have been leaving sort of that game emotionally, mentally, and wanting more. And that was a very uneven performance. And it was a performance where you wonder, had that injury to Raiola not happened, how would that game have played out? And that's an interesting spot to be. So more to prove here. And I think moving forward, home for Northwestern, that's a very favorable game. Home for Iowa, that's another favorable game. Iowa's a physical team. Indiana's only close game this season was to Iowa, at Iowa, 20-15. Indiana had to pull that out late. But Iowa's, again, that's one of those games in terms of matchup. It's really going to be an effort game for SC. It's going to be a game where as long as they come in with the right mindset and the right discipline, there's a significantly more amount of talent on the SC side of the field than with Iowa. And the fact that Iowa is still very limited from a passing game perspective, that playbook of Illinois, of Notre Dame, and what presumably Oregon is going to use is not really applicable to Iowa. And for those reasons, Northwestern and Iowa should be really winnable games for SC before getting to Eugene. We should be expecting this team to be 8-2 going into Eugene, but I think the questions will still remain. A, can they win a big game on the road? And B, if a team has a balanced attack in terms of pass run and is reacting to the box construct of SC at the line pre-snap, can SC make the adjustments and respond, and can they stay disciplined? So lots to unpack moving forward, always on the LAFB show. We always got you covered. Excited to get on with my guys, Tim and Ryan, here later in the week. And as always, folks, fight on.
Hey, Trojan family, thank you so much for hanging out and watching the USC LAFB show. Before you go, let me tell you quickly about our friends over at Sleeper. Go right now, download the Sleeper app. It's the #1 sports app, not just for season-long fantasy, but they've got live pickers, they've got live stat updates, they've got a chat you can chat with other users, plus the daily pick'em, which is a blast, or daily fantasy, whatever you want to call it. You go and pick 2 to 8 players across any sports. If you're talking USC, go choose J.D. Mayav in his next matchup. Pick more or less passing yards, more or less touchdowns. You stack those, and you can win real money. When you go to make your first deposit, make sure you use our promo code USC LAFB. You're going to get a match deposit up to $100. Put in $100, you get $100 free to play with from Sleeper. Put in $10, they'll match you that $10, so now you're sitting at $20 to play with. But also, right now, for any new users, no deposit required. You get $20 free entry. You can stack both. You can get the $20 for free, go make a deposit, use USC LAFB, and now you've got a bunch of free money to play with right there on the Sleeper app. Check it out, Trojan family, and when you do, tell them the guys at the USC LAFB sent you.